I'm in 1 Corinthians in my daily Bible reading. In 1 Corinthians 8, Paul tackles a complicated issue in the early church, eating meat that had been offered to idols. In Corinth, this wasn't just hypothetical. The marketplace was filled with meat that had been sacrificed in idol temples before landing on the vendor's table. This was their grocery store. Some Christians had no problem buying and eating this meat. They weren't offering it to a false god, weren't participating in idolatry. To them, it was just dinner. But others in the church couldn't shake the past. Maybe they were Jews who had always believed this was unclean, or Gentiles who had once bowed to those idols and now associated that meat with their former way of life. For them, it stirred something deep. So the church found itself divided. And Paul, as he so often does, doesn't take the easy route. He doesn't give a black and white answer. Instead, he invites us to think bigger, not just about meat, but about love. He begins with this unshakable truth. Therefore, as to the eating of food offered to idols, we know that an idol has no real existence and that there is no God but one. 1 Corinthians 8, verse 4. That's the foundation. An idol is nothing. God is everything. And yet, not everyone is in the same place with that understanding. However, not all possess this knowledge, but some, through former association with idols, eat food as really offered to an idol, and their conscience, being weak, is defiled. 1 Corinthians 8, verse 7. So what should we do? Paul tells us plainly, food will not commend us to God. We are no worse off if we do not eat, and no better off if we do. 1 Corinthians 8, 8. In other words, the meat itself isn't the issue. But here's where the real challenge begins. But take care that this right of yours does not somehow become a stumbling block to the weak. 1 Corinthians 8, 9. It's not just about what you're free to do. It's about how your actions affect your brother. If you, with knowledge, eat in a way that causes someone else to stumble, that's not strength. That's harm. And worse, it's sin. Thus, sinning against your brothers and wounding their conscience when it is weak, you sin against Christ. 1 Corinthians 8, verse 12. That's heavy. It's no longer about meat. It's about love. Therefore, if food makes my brother stumble, I will never eat meat, lest I make my brother stumble. 1 Corinthians 8, 13. That's kingdom living. That's what love looks like when it's not just words, it's sacrifice. Paul doesn't appeal to rights, he appeals to love. And in doing so, he echoes Jesus. The first shall be last. The greatest shall be your servant. We may not be arguing about meat sacrificed to idols today, but we have our own versions, modern issues that divide us because we elevate personal freedom over mutual love. So the same question comes to us. Is my freedom worth the cost of my brother's stumbling? You have to answer that for yourself. I have to answer it for myself. But one day we'll both answer it before the King whose kingdom we claim to serve. Maybe the better question in those moments isn't, am I right? But is this worth the cost? What does this passage stir in you about the way we love and serve one another? Share your reflections in the comments so we can grow together.